I've always believed that numbers don't lie. People do, emotions do, but numbers, they stay honest. I built my life on that logic, both in my career and my marriage. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 38, a financial analyst who spends most days buried in spreadsheets, profit margins, and yearly forecasts. My wife, Laura, was the opposite, spontaneous, bright, magnetic. Where I saw patterns, she saw possibilities. Maybe that's why we worked, or at least I thought we did. Our home in Seattle was modern, functional, filled with quiet. We didn't fight much. We didn't talk much either, not lately. Her schedule was always packed. Marketing events, client dinners, weekend team-building trips. I never questioned it. I trusted her, and trust was easy when you're too busy to imagine betrayal. It started with something small, an email, a digital reminder that shouldn't have existed. One Monday morning, between quarterly reports, I opened my inbox and found a message titled, "Maintenance Reminder, Toyota Highlander Service Due." Nothing unusual at first glance, except it wasn't from the dealership we used. The sender was a place I'd never heard of, North Ridge Auto, across the city, nearly an hour away. I frowned. Maybe it was spam, but the email had my name, my license plate number, and Laura's car model, down to the VIN. The record was legitimate. At the bottom, I saw a contact section. Under primary contact, it didn't list Laura or me. It said, Adam Brooks. I stared at that name for a full minute, like it was a typo that would correct itself if I looked long enough. Adam Brooks. The name sounded familiar. Then it clicked, Laura's colleague, the one she mentioned in passing months ago. Adam's handling the new campaign, she'd said. He's funny, a bit of a workaholic like you. The email didn't sit right. There was no reason for her coworker's name to appear on a car maintenance record. Still, I told myself it was a clerical mistake. I even drafted a message to the service center asking for clarification, then stopped. I deleted it. Instead, I opened our shared credit card statement. It wasn't suspicion yet, more like curiosity, the analytical reflex that kicks in when something doesn't balance. Scrolling through transactions, I noticed a few new entries. North Ridge Auto, $312.70, dated 2 weeks earlier. The cardholder name, L. Miller, but next to it, the reference note read, Service, A. Brooks. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe he'd helped her book the appointment. Maybe she was being nice or repaying a favor. But maybe doesn't survive long against data. That night, I mentioned the email casually over dinner. Laura was cooking pasta, humming to herself, barefoot in the kitchen like nothing in the world was wrong. Hey, I said, scrolling through my phone, pretending to sound indifferent. I got some weird service reminder for your car from North Ridge Auto. They had some guy's name listed, Adam Brooks. You ever been there? Her hand froze mid-stir. It was brief, half a second maybe, but I noticed. She looked up, smiled quickly. Oh, yeah, Adam recommended that place. He said they do better work than the dealership. I didn't think it mattered whose name they used. Her tone was smooth, practiced, even. Right? I nodded, forcing a smile. Makes sense. But something in her voice made my chest tighten. I didn't press further. I just saved the email in a separate folder, like I do with incomplete data sets, waiting for the missing numbers. 2 weeks later, the next anomaly appeared. Another email, this time a payment receipt from Harbor Inn Hotel, dated the same weekend Laura claimed to be at a regional workshop. Room for 2. Paid in full by our joint card. The confirmation name, A. Brooks. My stomach dropped. I wanted to delete it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But the rational part of my brain took over. Every detail had to be verified. Every assumption needed proof. I printed the receipt, the car service record, and the credit card statement. 3 documents. 3 coincidences, or 3 pieces of evidence. It wasn't enough to accuse her, but it was enough to start a separate file. That night, while she slept beside me, I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. L. Review pending. Inside, I scanned the documents, labeled them by date. This wasn't about anger. Not yet. It was about understanding the pattern, the same way I'd trace an accounting discrepancy or a missing invoice. Laura began staying out later, networking more often. Her phone, once left on the counter, was now always in her purse, face down. Sometimes she'd come home smelling like expensive cologne, not hers, not mine. I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe her laughter at dinner meant things were fine. But then, a week later, she forgot to close her laptop before leaving for work. I wasn't proud of what I did next. But when trust cracks, logic takes over. In her downloads folder sat a PDF invoice from a restaurant, the Ocean Bar and Grill. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of Merlot, 1 dessert. The notes section, "Thank you, Mr. Brooks, for dining with us." The timestamp matched a night she'd told me she was at a client presentation. I didn't feel rage. I felt stillness, the kind that comes before a storm, when you already know what's coming. I copied the file, added it to the folder, and renamed it for Restaurant Verification. The truth was forming like an equation I couldn't unsee. Car maintenance, hotel stay, dinner receipt, same man's name. If this were a report, any analyst would mark it as consistent correlation, high confidence level. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not without complete certainty. In the days that followed, Laura started acting nervous, checking her phone more, glancing at me longer than usual, as if trying to read my thoughts. She'd hug me unexpectedly, call me Han, again, cook my favorite meals. Maybe guilt has a smell, maybe love can't cover it. One night, she fell asleep on the couch, her phone slipping from her hand. The screen lit up, a message preview before it locked again. "Adam Brooks, can't wait to see you Friday." Same place. That was the moment it stopped being theory. I didn't open her phone. I didn't need to. I simply sat there, watching the glow fade to black, and thought, numbers don't lie. People just hope you're not counting. I told myself I would remain clinical. Emotions blur judgment. Data clarifies it. So that's what I did. I stopped looking at Laura and started looking at the trail she left, small, mundane things that, when assembled, made a pattern no one could plausibly dismiss. I set rules for myself, like a good analyst. No assumptions, no interpretations, only documents, timestamps, and corroborating sources. If it couldn't be verified, it didn't go into the file. I bought a small external hard drive and a 3-ring binder and decided to treat the situation the way I treated a material discrepancy at work, as a problem with causes, consequences, and corrective actions. First, I consolidated everything I'd already found. The auto service email, the hotel invoice, the restaurant receipt, each printed, dated, and annotated. I created a spreadsheet with columns labeled date, source, description, evidence type, confidence level. It felt almost ritualistic, clicking keys, adding rows, shading cells. I included metadata too, times, IP addresses where they were available, the last 4 digits of the card used. Good evidence is repeatable. Good evidence resists reinterpretation. Then I broadened my search. Laura's laptop still sat on her desk each morning, so I used the access we shared for household logistics to pull copies of calendar invites. There they were, meetings labeled as client dinners, training sessions, and regional strategy workshops. A lot of them included Adam as a participant. In several instances, Laura had accepted calendar invites that showed locations and times that matched the hotel and the restaurant receipts. Cross-referencing calendar entries with card statements and service emails turned coincidences into correlations. The company expense system was a little harder to access, but I'd helped her with expense reconciliation a few tax seasons ago, and the credentials were saved in a password manager we used together. That felt like walking a moral line, but I rationalized it. The goal was not prying for gossip. It was establishing objective facts. Once I logged in, the pattern jumped off the screen. Reimbursements for dinners that had no listed clients, hotel charges that exceeded policy limits, and travel upgrades that were inexplicably approved. Each entry carried a justification string that mirrored what the restaurant and hotel receipts showed. The same dates, the same places, the same last 4 digits on the payment fields. Next, I dug into the dealership records. I called Northridge Auto and, under the pretense of confirming a service scheduling error, asked for a copy of the service ticket tied to my VIN. They mailed a photocopy within a day. The ticket had Laura's signature, unmistakable, the same slant and flourish I'd seen on our mortgage documents, and a notation, alternate contact, Adam Brooks, spouse/partner. There was a photocopy of a driver's license attached, labeled for verification. The driver's license photo matched the professional headshot I'd seen in a promotional email from Adam's company. His name, the address, even the middle initial matched the LinkedIn profile I'd remembered. At that point, it stopped being about whether someone had done something secretive. It was about why those actions had been so carefully documented in places meant to be official. The dealership had made photocopies. The hotel had given a name on the reservation. The restaurant had printed the name on the receipt. Whoever it was had treated this like a real, legitimate relationship, not something illicit and furtive. I printed all the digital records and added them to the binder. I included a cover sheet, evidence packet, personal and financial. On the second page, I wrote a concise timeline, date, event, supporting docs. The timeline started with Adam's transfer to our city 3 months earlier and ended with the dealership visit. Between those two anchors were hotel stays, restaurant charges, joint calendar invites, and expense reimbursements. I highlighted transactions that appeared on both corporate expense reports and our joint credit card. Duplicate entries were the strongest proof of coordination. Then I made copies. 2 sets. One for me, one for my attorney. I didn't want anything to go missing later. I also backed up everything to a secure cloud folder with a new, anonymous account, labeled Q4 Review, like a corporate file, because in my line of work you never rely on a single physical copy. I'll admit the next part felt strange. The act of making a legal case out of personal betrayal turned intimacy into paperwork. But the legal world likes tidy packages. Documents with dates and chain of custody matter far more than tearful confessions in courtrooms. So I called Michael Karen, a family lawyer my brother had used once, and asked if he could look at something. Michael's office was a short drive downtown. He greeted me with the polite neutrality lawyers practice when they want to assess emotion without appearing to. "Ethan," he said, offering a seat. "What can I do for you?" I shouldn't have needed to explain the binder. The man of numbers and logic in me took over again. I placed the packet on the table between us and watched Michael flip through it with a growing interest. His expression moved from professional reserve to the kind of recognition that comes when a case presents itself clearly. "This is very thorough," he said finally. "You weren't making anything up." He tapped the service ticket, the photocopy of Adam's ID, the hotel invoice. "This is more than suspicion. It's documentation. In our state, most divorces are no fault. But this amount of corroborated evidence matters for settlement negotiations and could influence asset division, not to mention potential company investigations if expenses were misused." He asked the practical questions. Did I want to file immediately or attempt negotiation? Would I consider a mediated settlement? The words were legalese, but the thrust was the same. This could be messy, but the evidence gives me leverage. Michael explained options without emotion. Filing could prompt HR involvement, which might degrade Adam and Laura's professional standing. A negotiated settlement could conserve privacy, but might offer different financial outcomes. I felt a complicated relief. For months I'd had that simmering uncertainty. Was I being paranoid? Was I misreading ordinary professional proximity? Michael's calm, methodical review turned fear into a plan. He recommended filing within a week to preserve timelines and suggested securing our financial accounts immediately, changing passwords, calling banks to flag suspicious transactions, freezing certain joint cards if necessary. He advised I document everything going forward, any messages, calls, expenses, or odd behavior. "Keep everything," he said, "even things that feel insignificant. Patterns are built from small things." He also warned of the psychological fallout. Lawyers are trained to see the human cost after the legal strategy is set. Michael asked if I had a support system, someone I could stay with if things escalated. I told him about my friend, Brian, and Michael nodded. "Good. Be ready for a strong initial reaction when papers are served. People rarely respond rationally in the first moments." Before I left, Michael asked a question that cut straight to the heart. "What do you want out of this?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. I want clarity. I want fairness. I want to rebuild without lies. It felt clinical, and it felt painfully true. Walking back to my car with the binder under my arm, I felt oddly empowered. The weight of the pages felt like a tangible thing I could hold when the rest of my life felt uncertain. For the first time since I'd seen the car service email, there was a plan. Documentation was no longer just an abstract comfort. It was a strategy. That evening, I changed passwords, called the bank, and set up notifications for any charge on our joint account. I printed another spreadsheet, this one labeled Actions, with items like freeze joint card, set up cloud backup, Contact HR if needed. I sat under the kitchen light, cross-referencing my timeline with Michael's notes. We weren't acting out of spite. We were acting to preserve stability and to prevent future surprises. Before bed, I placed the binder in the top drawer of my desk. It was inconveniently ordinary, manila folder, binder clip, and yet it felt sacred. Not because it represented someone's betrayal, but because it represented the truth, assembled and undeniable. As I turned off the lamp, I thought of how our lives are often defined by the smallest administrative details. The forms we sign, the receipts we accept, the calendars we invite others to. They're banal until they aren't. Tonight, I had made them mean something. The data didn't lie. And now, neither would I. Serving papers sounds simple on paper, just a legal formality, a handoff, a timestamp in a system. But the human side of it, the tremor behind the signature, the silence that follows, that's where the reality hits. Michael arranged everything. The delivery would happen at Laura's office, neutral ground, witnessed by HR. He said it was the cleanest option, no emotional scenes at home, no unpredictable confrontations. I agreed. I didn't want drama. I wanted closure. The night before, I barely slept. The binder was still on my desk, open to the final page, the formal petition for dissolution of marriage. My name, her name. 10 years condensed into a few paragraphs of legal English. Irreconcilable differences. I almost laughed at the phrasing. Nothing in those words described what had really happened. At 9:47 the next morning, Michael texted me one word. Delivered. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen. Somewhere across the city, Laura was reading the truth, printed and notarized. I imagined her confusion first, the disbelief, the shock, and then the fear when she realized what the attached documents meant. Every receipt, every timestamp, every signature. The full mosaic of what she thought was hidden. At 9:59, my phone rang. Her name appeared. I didn't answer. At 10:01, another call. 10:04 again. By the fourth one, I muted the device completely and turned to my monitor, pretending to work. At 10:30, a message came through anyway. Laura, Ethan, please pick up. We need to talk. Please. Then another. I don't understand. What is this? Why would you do this to me at work? And finally, this isn't fair. You didn't even ask me. You just assumed. I stared at the screen, the irony almost unbearable. Assumed? I had more documentation than most auditors bring to a criminal trial. I typed, deleted, retyped, then sent only one sentence. All communication goes through the lawyers. She didn't reply after that. By noon, Michael called. His tone was calm but slightly tense, the way professionals speak when they're managing someone else's storm. She's in shock, he said. Apparently, she confronted the HR manager. They confirmed the documents were legitimate. It's done. Don't respond directly to her. It's the right move. I exhaled slowly. Done. The word echoed, heavy but liberating. That evening, when I came home, the house was silent. Laura's things were still there, but it already felt like she wasn't. Her favorite mug on the counter, a perfume bottle on the dresser, a coat on the chair, still carrying her scent, the faint trace of jasmine and something sweet, like memory. I expected sadness, maybe rage. Instead, I felt space. Room to breathe for the first time in months. 2 days later, news from her office started circulating. One of her coworkers, someone I knew loosely from company gatherings, texted me. Hey man, I'm sorry. People are talking. HR's doing some kind of review. I don't know details, but Adam's in trouble. I didn't respond, but I knew exactly what it meant. The documents I'd filed weren't just legal proof. They were financial proof too. The duplicated expenses, the hotel stays charged to corporate cards. HR departments love nothing more than an opportunity to clean up a scandal. By the end of the week, the rumors solidified into fact. Adam Brooks was suspended pending investigation for misuse of company funds. Laura was placed on administrative leave, temporary, they said, but everyone knew what that meant. When Michael told me, I didn't smile. I didn't want revenge to taste like triumph. It just felt quiet justice, the kind that doesn't need applause. 3 days later, she came home. I heard the key turn in the lock. For a moment, my heart jumped, a reflex built from years of routine. Then the sound of her heels on the floor reminded me. Routine was over. She stood in the doorway, eyes red, makeup smudged, holding an envelope, the copy of the divorce petition I'd filed. Her voice trembled. Ethan, please. You can't just, this isn't me. You don't understand what was happening. I kept my tone even. I understand enough. You don't need to explain. Tears welled up. It wasn't serious. I was confused. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Please, don't end it like this. I looked at her, the same woman I'd once built a life with, and realized how little of that life remained. The empathy in me wanted to comfort her. The logic in me remembered the data. Laura, I said quietly, I didn't end it. You did. I just documented it. Her face twisted, somewhere between disbelief and guilt. You were always like this, she whispered. So cold. Everything's a report to you, a spreadsheet. You can't feel anything. Maybe she was right. Or maybe it was just easier for her to believe that. But emotions hadn't saved us before. They'd blinded me. Facts had finally set me free. She dropped the envelope on the table and left. The door clicked behind her like punctuation at the end of a long paragraph. The silence that followed was heavier than before, but cleaner. No lies humming under the surface. No more checking statements or pretending not to see what was in plain sight. Later that week, Michael confirmed that Adam had been officially terminated for breach of corporate policy. Laura, after a disciplinary review, was demoted and reassigned to a smaller regional office outside the city. Her salary cut nearly in half. When he told me, I sat in my car outside his office for a long time. Not celebrating, just absorbing. The structure of consequences, the neat symmetry of it all. Actions, documentation, verification, outcome. In my world, that's how truth works. That weekend, I packed the last of her things into boxes and left them by the door. The house looked bigger without her. Not emptier, just wider, brighter. I opened the windows and let the cold spring air in. Before bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and stared at the binder one last time. 10 months ago, those pages had felt like heartbreak. Now, they felt like boundaries. I slid the binder into a cabinet, closed the drawer, and said out loud, "That's enough." For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Silence became a kind of company. At first, it was unbearable, too clean, too final. Every echo in the house reminded me of what used to fill it. Her voice, the soft hum of the espresso machine, the faint music she played while working. But eventually, the silence stopped feeling like loss. It became proof. Proof that chaos had finally left. A month after the divorce was finalized, the house no longer smelled like her perfume. I'd changed the curtains, repainted the living room, and donated the couch we bought together. Not because I was bitter, but because I couldn't stand sitting where she used to fall asleep after pretending everything was fine. Work filled most of my days. I took on more projects, longer hours, anything to stay moving. The human mind can survive almost anything, as long as it has structure. That's what I kept telling myself. But at night, when I got home, the structure dissolved. I'd sit at the dining table, pour a drink, and wonder what she was doing now. Whether she ever looked back, or if she'd convinced herself I was the villain in her version of events. Maybe she was right too. People rarely survive betrayal with clean hands, even the ones betrayed. Sometimes, I'd open my email drafts and start typing letters I'd never sent. Apologies for my distance. Questions I didn't need answered. Memories of us that still felt too vivid to erase. Then I'd delete them all and shut the laptop. Closure doesn't arrive with words. It arrives in quiet decisions, the ones no one sees. 3 months later, I ran into an old colleague who still worked at Laura's company. He told me Adam had moved to another city, trying to start fresh under a new name. Laura, meanwhile, had resigned after her transfer. She doesn't really talk to anyone, he said. She just disappeared. The news didn't bring satisfaction, only a kind of melancholy justice. Everyone had lost something in that mess: reputation, love, illusion. The difference was, I'd learned to live with my loss. One Sunday morning, I went for a drive outside the city, somewhere I hadn't been since before everything fell apart. The countryside looked exactly the same: flat roads, old barns, early light slicing through fog. I parked by a small lake we'd once visited years ago, back when we still believed weekends could fix what the weekdays broke. I sat there for an hour, just listening. The wind against the water, the distant sound of birds, the creak of the car's old frame. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tense. I didn't feel angry, just still. That's when I realized healing isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting that the memory no longer owns you. The images of her and Adam no longer burned. They existed, yes, but like photos in a closed album, no longer demanding to be looked at. When I got back home, I made dinner, something simple, just for me. I put on music, low volume, the kind we used to play during better times. And I smiled, not out of nostalgia, but gratitude. I'd survived the version of myself who tolerated lies just to avoid loneliness. Over the next few months, life found its rhythm again. I reconnected with old friends, started running in the mornings, even joined a photography group, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. Michael called one afternoon to check in. "You're different," he said. "Calmer. Like someone who stopped fighting ghosts." I laughed. Maybe I just stopped feeding them. He smiled, proud but tired. "You did the right thing, Ethan. You handled it clean. That's rare." "Clean doesn't mean painless," I said quietly. "No," he replied, "but it means honest." That night, I looked through my photos, the new ones. Sunsets, city streets, small human moments. Not one picture of her. Not because I erased the past, but because I'd finally started framing new things worth remembering. One evening, months later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, an old one. It was the two of us at that same lake, smiling, younger, before any of it went wrong. On the back, in her handwriting, were 4 words. "I'm sorry. Be well." No signature. No explanations. Just that. I placed the photo back in the envelope and put it inside a drawer. I didn't need closure anymore, but I respected the gesture. Maybe that was her way of setting herself free too. The next morning, I went for my usual run. The city was waking up, lights spilling across rooftops, air crisp with the promise of something new. And somewhere between the sound of my own breath and the rhythm of my steps, I realized something simple. I wasn't running from her anymore. I was just running. When people ask me now if I'd ever trust again, I don't hesitate. I say yes, but not blindly. Trust, like a rebuilt house, stands stronger when you understand the cost of every brick. I don't regret loving her. I regret ignoring the signs that the foundation was cracking. But that's the thing about experience. It teaches you how to listen before things break. Sometimes, late at night, I still glance at the spot on the wall where her favorite painting used to hang. The empty space doesn't make me sad anymore. It reminds me that not all absence is loss. Some of it is peace. And that, after everything, is enough. Moral of the story: when your wife cheats, it's not a reflection of your weakness. It's a reflection of her choices. You can question yourself, overanalyze what went wrong, blame your absence, your silence, your mistakes. But infidelity always begins where respect ends, not where love fades. Don't try to fix what's already been betrayed. Love can be rebuilt only if both sides want to and are capable of being honest. But cheating isn't a mistake, it's a decision. And if someone once decided to lie to your face, tomorrow they'll just learn to lie more quietly. A real man doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't seek revenge. He reclaims control over himself, not over her. Walking away with dignity isn't coldness, it's self-respect. As long as you react, you're a prisoner. As long as you explain, you're still hoping. But when you stay silent, sign the papers, and walk away, you stop being a victim and start being a man who knows his worth. Remember this: dignity is worth more than love. Love can die, but your self-respect must never.